Hello and welcome to A Brilliant Idea Every 60 Seconds here on FusedLogic TV. My name is Michael Crichton. Today it's going to be very interesting. I'm joined by an old friend and colleague, Mr. Steve Zurikowski of Dynamic Vision. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Michael.
We're going to be taking a look at the work that Dynamic Vision does with its clients and an immersive partner as well in terms of 3D animation, especially applied to the technical industry. And also 3D interactive simulations, which are just mind-boggling. We're going to be joined on the show today by Amy Nagra, Marketing and Events Manager, Industrial Services Development for Veolia Environmental Services out of the UK, which is a Dynamic Vision's client. And also Andy Beal, who is the CEO of WorldViz out of Santa Barbara. He'll be joining us by Skype. He is an immersive partner with Dynamic Vision. What is Dynamic Vision? Well, let's take a look. Here's what they do. What's interesting, and we'll get into this as the program progresses, is that nowadays, given that the different demographic profiles have been exposed to 3D animation in a variety of ways through games and so on, that the whole context of how, for example, in safety, if you're talking to a younger demographic profile, how they respond to material that's given to them. It's no longer just enough to hand them a manual and have them take a test. How can you immerse them in the experience? We're going to talk about that. We are joined now by Amy Nagra, who is the Marketing and Events Manager, Industrial Services Development of Veolia Environmental Services. And as you see on the map there, that you have Wolverhampton and London are their locations. Amy, welcome to the program.
Hello, Paul. Hello.
Well, why don't we begin by asking you what was the experience like getting into the process with Dynamic Vision and what Veolia wanted to accomplish? Tell us a little bit about the project and maybe a little bit about the process.
We first heard about Dynamic at a show that we were involved in a few years ago, and it was my colleague who was actually I believe they had a stand next to Steve. So that's how the relationship built. We saw some of the visuals that Steve had produced, and a colleague of mine brought them back to England, and I was having a look through some of the animations that Steve's team had built. The reasons why Veolia have never got into animation or any sort of marketing in this way is we've always been led by the markets. We've always been reactive to sort of our customers in terms of if there's any bids or any prequels. We've almost kind of, visited the customer sites and delivered a PowerPoint presentation, but we've never, used multimedia in that sense. And I was trying to, I guess make that huge step for the company from, the traditional forms of explaining and presenting to our customers in the sense of PowerPoint, in the sense of brochures, to actually, producing a 3D visualization that actually explains a very technical process. And a lot of the services that we offer are very technical. We work on chemical plants, on refineries, and we do things from tank cleaning to high-pressure water jetting. And often these processes cannot be explained through a brochure. They cannot be explained through a meeting, but in terms of actually producing a 3D animation that appeals to different levels of technical knowledge in terms of a tank clean. So you've got people like your procurement people who may not have a huge amount of knowledge in terms of the process involved, but then you've got very technical people who can instantly pick out, how the equipment will be mobilized, how the project will work, the early stages of the project, and how we actually go through the process of cleaning a tank. So it appeals to different levels of technical awareness, and certainly, we started off by building a sales-based animation where we produced a visualization for the tank cleaning arm of our business, where we clean tanks through a automated system called the crude oil washing system, which is where we use robots essentially to clean a tank. So we don't actually allow our guys to actually go into the tank, and it's a new technology, and what we want to do is actually capture this and explain this to our customers who have always used traditional forms of tank cleaning.
Amy?
And that's where Steve's team came in, absolutely fantastic in the way they were able to grasp hold of the different elements of the crude oil washing system.
Actually, Amy, we're taking a look at an animation right now that was produced for this process. Maybe you can walk through a little bit about what the animation reveals.
And sorry, Amy, what we're viewing right now is the Shell decommissioning process.
Okay. Well, this was for the decommissioning arm of our business. We were involved in a bid process with Shell, and we were down to the last two companies. And what we had to do was to produce a visualization that explained how our facility would work, how we would actually decommission several oil platforms from the North Sea. So the visualization explains our transportation of the structures, how we would actually load them onto site, the placement of the structures, and this visualization is an accurate depiction of what the facility looks like. What you can see is actually how the facility, the size of the facility, how the structures would actually be loaded in, where they would be placed. And what we want to do is actually illustrate sort of that there is, very little visual pollution. The area where the facility is based it backs onto a very large residential area. And so what we had to demonstrate through the visualization is, how this, how we would actually control visual pollution, how the structures would be laid, any environmental issues, in terms of bunded area, and essentially tell the story to Shell. We, in terms of the facility, there was very little there. So when we heard about the international visit from Holland by Shell, we thought, oh gosh, we need to actually explain to them, what is it we were planning on doing at the facility? What are our plans in terms of loading the structures? And it told the story fantastically. The success is there. We won the contract, and the work is being carried out over the next year.
Maybe to sort of bring this to a close, I would like to get your take on what challenges specifically. Was there a specific challenge that you encountered from your perspective, Steve, on the project?
Well, the biggest thing, and Amy's aware of this, of course, was we had extreme tight timelines. That Shell project for us, we had to turn that around in a week. But again, the opportunity was there to put Veolia to the forefront on that, and we were able to deliver. So some of the images that I just had on screen there were actually some of the photographs taken while I was out there visiting Amy. It was kind of interesting to see the process come together after the visualization was done and the contract was won. So
I mean, that's an amazing thing, I think, in terms of being able to be like all of us who work creatively, that you actually, from the visualization until it becomes a reality. Amy, I want to thank you for spending time with us. Amy is with Veolia Environmental Services, Amy Nagra. And some of the projects that the company is working on, some of the visualization projects have been, of course, the Shell Indefatigable Field Decommissioning and Recycling Project, the crude oil washing systems called COWS. I think we saw something of that where on the screen, and also the City of Bristol Refuse and Recycle Collection. Amy, I want to thank you so much for joining us from the UK, from Veolia Environmental Services. We hope it's a little later in the day for you, so I hope we're bringing your day to a good conclusion.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
All right, thanks, Amy. All right, let's carry on. You've got some demonstrations, which is the exciting part for me actually. Now, let's walk through some of the simulations and explain some of the techniques and the approaches that you've used.
Absolutely. Just extending, I guess, what we do in 3D animation. As you mentioned earlier, Michael, that some things have come to term in terms of technology over the years. Hardware is caught up, software is advanced. And the younger generation is coming into the marketplace as well. So we're trying to engage individuals on a training aspect and a sales and marketing aspect. So I'm just going to jump through a few of these items here very, very quickly.
Absolutely.
Fall safety is a very big thing here, obviously in Alberta in the construction area. And we sat in on a fall safety course to kind of get a feel for what it was like to look at the calculations for calculating a safe fall clearance formula. And it's a very challenging...
There is a safe fall, apparently?
Apparently there is,
All right.
and I'll show you how that works. So very PowerPoint intensive, a lot of calculations, and you're dealing with individuals where they may have a grade 9, grade 10 education level, or English can be a real challenge. So to get this concept across, we looked at the concept of putting together a visual tool set.
Well, let's take a look at this. Looks like a video game.
Yeah, so basically what it is, it can be instructor-led or it can be self-paced, where you come in and learn various things on the formula. So in this case here, what we're doing is we've given the individual a description, and it's a case where the instructor may say, go ahead and try and figure this out on your own, or again, supplement to the training. So in this case here, very quickly, I'm not going to go into too much detail. The formulas basically deal with the length of the lanyard, and lanyards come usually 4 feet or 6 foot lengths.
Oh, okay.
We're going to assume you're on site and you've got a 6 foot lanyard. And we graphically show how these elements go together so the individual can see these in real time.
Right.
The height of the D-ring is basically 5 feet, where you're standing to the back.
Right.
And the tie-off point, where are you going to put these elements, where are you going to tie off to? And let's assume that's an 8 foot tie-off point.
Okay.
So right away we can quickly see the numbers there in terms of the values. We can do the math here, and there's 3 feet. That's our free fall distance. So with those elements in place, you would fall 3 feet. If you look to the right, you can see 13.8 feet per second. Well, what does that really mean? It means 2,600 pounds of force is on your body, and it's going to be very dangerous. You're going to get injured, and there's some issues. So,
do you take the individual's weight into account at this point? Or?
No, not at all. It's strictly to deal with these variables right here.
Okay,
because
all
at
right.
the end of the day, the force is
It's still the same.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So there's things that we can change in our control. We can get a shorter lanyard of 4 feet. We can't tie off the tie-off point at 5, but maybe we actually, we'll keep that at 8. And we'll do the math here, and we've got now a tie-off point of a free fall distance of 1 foot, just basically changing the lanyard length. So we have 8 feet per second. We're in the green zone. We would still get possibly injured, but it would be a minimal risk in terms of that. So the individuals would come through and try this, I guess, in the learning mode. We would then take them back into an evaluation mode and let them come into here and try out the results based on scenarios. So,
well, let's try out the results.
so in this case, I'm just going to quickly run through and assume that you picked a 6-foot lanyard in that same area there. And if
I hope I was right.
And if we do show...
Oh, I've got a concussion.
Yeah, you've got some...
Well, I got serious
you'll
ankle
never dance
problems,
again.
and I'm never going to dance
Yeah.
again, right?
So what we can do here, again, they know the calculation is wrong. They would come in and change the variables to maybe a 4-foot.
Right.
And we can do it in slow motion and try it again. So now they can get a visual look. Oh, I'm still on the...
Whoa.
Let's just do a reset.
But you know what? This is excellent, though, because this, not only that,
4
it
feet.
reminds you just what you could be facing if you don't do this right.
There we go. So that's...
There we go.
So-
I'm kind of like the Titanic.
Swinging away,
Swinging away.
in the world. So you can see here, you don't hit the ground, but you're still faced with a pendulum motion that's could cause you to hit other objects, or there's still quite a shock on
Right.
in terms of that. So again, they can use this self-paced, if they will, and part of a training package with an instructor. So that's sort of...
Wow, that's fascinating.
That's basically embracing 3D animation with some flash wrapper and that type of thing. So I'll quickly jump into another one here. We get more into equipment simulation, if you will. And so the whole idea behind this, again, is to extend the assets that we develop for 3D animation into an environment where the sales manager can take this and basically self-drive their presentation.
Right.
They're not set to a linear-based mode that we saw earlier. So in this case, there was a group that wanted to take this piece to a trade show instead of hauling the entire equipment down to the show floor.
Right.
So what we did here is we brought it into an environment that a sales individual can take this and spin it around, zoom in from any angle, if you will.
And it's actually better than sometimes than having the real thing, because you're actually able to completely manipulate this in any way or shape or fashion that you want.
Absolutely. So not only can they focus in on specific areas that maybe their client wants to look at, but we can actually interact with these controls. So as
Look at that.
Move this lever up and down, the legs move up and down on the actual outriggers themselves. So we can zoom into here, and again, this is primarily could also run as a training app where we want to load pipe from a certain side and a certain center. So by switching different levers, we've also taken a remote control with us here. We could plug the real one into a USB joystick, or in this case here, if they don't have it, this allows them to come in here and actually run the levers. So we could actually show how pipe goes up and down and rolls onto the actual lift.
Just out of curiosity, something like this, how long a project is this?
Again, you know, Michael, it really comes back down to what we talked about earlier in terms of what information are we provided. If we have the 3D assets, that's a real big value for us. The next thing that comes into play is some optimization of the elements, because a lot of the engineering data can be quite heavy, what we call heavy data.
Yeah.
So we have to clean things up a little bit, and then the intelligence in terms of what is the programming side for this. So it can be anywhere as little, I guess, as 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes up to 3 months. It depends on the complexity of the equipment.
Amazing. I think this will be a good time to connect with your immersive partner, I think, who is waiting for us in Santa Barbara. And we'd like to welcome Andy Beal, who comes to us via Skype. He's the CEO of WorldViz from Santa Barbara. How you doing, Andy?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Now, how did you guys ultimately connect?
How do we connect?
Well, why don't I start with
yeah,
that one, Andy? Yeah, because I was the initiator of that. Basically, what we were doing is looking at different technologies to extend, again, our offering to our clients. So in the interactive realm, there's a lot of different, what we call game engines out there in terms of that, and some of the platforms that we've seen here are demonstrated in that. So I did some research on interactive and immersive 3D, and Andy's group at WorldViz really came up to the forefront. And it was an opportunity where we went down and met with Andy and his group to kind of show him what we were involved with. And at that point in time, Andy was interested in getting more involved in the energy sector and the oil and gas side of things. So there was kind of a natural fit there in terms of, again, extending not only the interactive side. And I'll let Andy talk about what immersive really is.
Right. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't mind asking Andy a question. I mean, given the industry that's out there in terms of gaming and so on, was it, how did you end up, where did you begin and how did you end up making this focus specific to industry?
But the beginning goes back almost 20 years, and I'll just keep it very brief. This technology grew out of a university research lab, and my background is actually psychology, and I created much of this technology as a way to study people in a lab. And the equipment in psychology, in many ways, is relatively limited. To create a rich scenario that you can expose somebody to, you often resort to reading a story about an incident or a social interaction, or trying to create a visual, say a visual clip. And you'll find that either using hammer and nails and trying to recreate a small stage in a lab setting, or you're hiring actors to try and create a social encounter. I began this technology back in the early 90s, actually, back when I had very little money in my department and was literally taking apart Sony Watchman TVs and using scuba masks and hammer and nails to build the technology that let me stop building with hammer and nails and program and use art tools like what Steve uses to create now really compelling visual environments that allow somebody to be what you referred to earlier in your show as immersion, or another term for that is telepresence. So you and Amy and Steve have cited how sort of ubiquitous visual simulation is becoming across many fields, and certainly for the younger generation. What we bring to the table is the sense of immersion, dropping yourself into, as sometimes referred to as the holodeck.
I would be interested to find out in working with clients, because you talk about psychology. It's interesting where we all came from. I'm still doing the same thing. I must have missed a boat somewhere. I started as an artist. I'm still an artist. But ultimately, and mind you, I was married to a psychologist. We just don't want to go there. But when we talk about immersive, I would imagine it's very interesting sometimes with some of your clients who, do they get it right away? Because ultimately, it's not just about 3D animation. Really what it is about immersion, which means understanding psychology. Do you find that most clients respond quite easily to that? Is it a bit of a tug of war?
Not until you try it. Not until you try it. So, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You have to experience to understand what virtual reality is like. And you can tell somebody, this would be like actually walking across a bridge, a real bridge, where you're scared. And they look at the image and they go, yeah, sure. Until they actually put on the headset and are literally basically in the holodeck. And now they refuse to walk, or their knees are shaking so badly that they got to grab onto somebody in the real world.
Now we have a clip. Yeah, we do have some samples. Maybe, Steve, you can walk us through some of this as well.
Sure, Andy. We're looking at the, and you might be able to see in a second, the chemical spill.
Yes, so this is a sort of a operator training scenario where you're looking at how is somebody going to respond to a protocol for, in this case, it's a chemical spill from a tanker truck after a minor accident. When they're faced with being in that scene, not having their clipboard in front of them, having sirens go off, people screaming from nearby houses because they can smell the gas fumes. how are they going to respond under that kind of pressure? That's a very different type of testing scenario and even training scenario than giving somebody a clipboard in front of a desk and asking them to imagine the situation.
That's absolutely amazing. Let's move. Can we move to the next one?
Sure. Do you have the pit one?
Yeah, we have pit. We have corner wall projection. We have the pit. Would you?
Go to the pit. And
Let's go to the pit.
That's a very common. It's a fantastic demo live. It looks somewhat tame visually, but this scene, when you look down and you see a 30-foot deep pit and a small wooden plank that you have to walk across, we literally, and the person you see on the screen there, that's somebody from the company who's kind of hamming it up there, but we have about half the people get a very visceral reaction, shaky knee, sweaty palms. About 10% will refuse outright to walk across that.
I was one of them.
It's an amazing effect. Yeah, it's a great show tool. We'll have this ready at the oil and gas show in case somebody wants to be scared next week.
And
in addition to the more relevant items.
What we ended up doing, and part of the demo that will be there next week as well, is we do have a drilling rig. So you're up on the racking board 100 feet in the air. And so you get a feel for being at ground level. And you put some of these, the managers who may have never been up there before at that level. And right away they start grabbing for a handrail because they are truly up that high off the ground. So as Andy said, the feel is, you just can't describe it.
Well, that's amazing. So there's a physical connection which really sends the message home, because I think, Bill C-45 was in Canada sort of reinvented the context around liability, around safety. Mm-hmm. Put a couple of CEOs in some of these programs, and maybe they'll consider, you know what, maybe I need to take more care of my workers. We've got another one. It's quite a long one called corner wall projection. I wouldn't mind taking a look at that one, and if you guys can walk us through that one, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So this is the first two are somebody wearing a headset. So you're bringing the graphics right onto their eyeballs. This is a cave projection type system where you're surrounding a person in a theater. And this is in a lot of ways more appealing because you don't have to be encumbered by wearing TV monitors on your head. You can look around, you're wearing 3D goggles, much like the kind you see on consumer TVs these days, and you're able to move around. In addition to the 3D screen, which is kind of a consumer technology, this person's actually being tracked, not only their hand, but their head. And what that allows is the person to squat, to move forward, and to peer at things just as if they're really in that environment. And they'll get a very strong sense as they move about that the structure is solid, it's there. To you as the viewer, you'll see that as distortion because it's being correctly rendered 60 times a second to where that individual is in front of the screen. So he stands, goes down, he gets a view of that vintage guitar at the exact eye location where he was.
So I know that industry has a big demand. Have you guys been flirting with medical science? Because I could imagine this kind of thing could find its way into education, where now you begin to, for example, a training as a doctor or surgeon, you start to be able to actually perform surgeries without actually having to have a body in the room. Are these the kinds of things that are coming down the pike with what you're doing? Yeah,
you could say we're pretty promiscuous in terms of flirting with many industries. Medical is certainly one, but I would say the areas that are getting more traction very recently for us is architecture and training. So you're finding organizations that are building, say, hospitals, where they're putting in, say, $500 million into a huge city hospital, or wanting to test out a surgery theater or 10 surgery theaters with various alternates and being able to try that out live.
Well, there is obviously no limit. Well, there might be limits, but in a sense of applying to safety and training programs, sales and marketing, maintenance and operations, education, you guys are obviously going to be very, very busy for a very, very, very long time. What kind of projects are you, I know you probably can't reveal too much. What kind of projects might you be able to share that you're beginning to work on that are in the early stages?
Yeah, well, the site orientation tour as well, part of your involvement.
Right.
That will kind of
I'm so proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just kind of getting the energy sector and the oil and gas organizations aware of what's coming down the pipe in terms of technology. And that's part of the reason for the show next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and is to bring Andy and WorldViz down to share with us in letting people come and try some of this technology and get a feel for it. So.
Well, I may be showing up in my limo for my premiere debut as the avatar of this incredible
Red carpet treatment.
There's residuals, aren't there, on this project, long term, or does the avatar age over time and then you retire? I don't know what happens.
Be careful, you might get switched out real quick.
Yeah, I know. Say no, we're going with a nice blonde now,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That's what's going to happen. Andy Beal, I want to thank you so much, the CEO for WorldViz. The website is worldviz.com. Obviously on the leading edge in what is a remarkable field. I want to thank you for joining us. I wish you the best of luck in Calgary with Steve next week at the Oil and Gas Show. Thank you so much for joining us from Santa Barbara, California.
Thank you. It was great.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Andy.
So where do we go from here? You've got we've seen an awful lot. Is there anything else you can show us? I mean, I'm getting hungry for more.
Well, I think we've kind of covered a very quick 30,000 foot overview, Michael. Maybe just wrap up a little bit on some of the applications.
Yes,
and the
absolutely.
benefits,
Yes.
for those there as well. So,
Yep.
basically, just to summarize, as I mentioned earlier, our primary market is, I guess, the sales and marketing is our entry point for more clients.
Right.
And again, visualization we classify as animation, interactive 3D, and immersive 3D. So all of those fit into here at some point in time.
Right.
Where it is with specific clients really depends on their needs. So these are just some of the advantages of how you can take control of the technology and apply it to your needs. Obviously, safety and training, and what we end up finding the next step is someone in a training environment or safety organization would see the assets that we've built and say, you know what, I want to reuse that in my course, or how do we extend the 3D data that we already have and putting it forward into something that makes sense. And then in the maintenance and operations, you can really get involved with interactive parts catalogs, step-by-step procedures on how to take things apart and that type of thing. So just in terms of the advantages, it's pretty straightforward. You can really enhance your sales. If you're given a dynamic tool set to show your process clear and confirm your design intent, there's really no discrepancy at the end of the day. You're not reading from a brochure. You don't have to say much at times. You just let the pictures
Let the picture tell the word, or tell the story.
And increase safety. So from a safety training point of view, as I mentioned, we put you in a controlled and safe environment to let you play around things, and then you don't have to take equipment off the field and out of production.
Talk about efficiencies and also the ability to connect anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and start training your staff before your product's even built as well.
Right.
That type of thing.
Right.
And again, improved communication. It's basically the concept of crossing language barriers. At the end of the day, we can dub in whatever language you want, or you can just let it stand alone and speak for itself. So, and just kind of to talk a little bit more about dynamic vision in terms of why dynamic vision. We specialize in serving technical industries, as I said off the top. That is our focus. We pride ourselves on being able to take a model apart and understand how things go together. We have world-class projects dealing with groups like Veolia, Weatherford in the U.S. as well. The beauty of the internet, as we can see here with Skype, we can do a lot of web conferencing. And I haven't met the Veolia crew in terms of these projects. I just met Amy and her crew here last May, and it was interesting because we can collaborate and get online and deal with across the pond, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And creativity and innovation. We're striving to be better in terms of technology, and groups like Andy are a really good example in terms of bringing them to help our offering to our clients as well. And they would classify as our best-in-class business partner. We're not all things to all people.
Right.
We specialize in our focus is 3D animation, 3D visualization. So if we need script writers, voiceover talent, you name it, we go and get those.
You have to go
people.
get the best in class.
We do.
FusedLogic TV, Dynamic Vision, and WorldViz. I mean, we're unstoppable.
Absolutely.
We're unstoppable. Steve Zurikowski, I want to thank you so much for coming up from Calgary. I want to wish you the best of luck. You're at the Oil and Gas Show. The dates are?
Actually, they are, if you go to one more slide here, I've got some information there for you. These are some of our upcoming events. We are launching a new website here next week. So
that'll be dynamicvision.ca. Okay.
Yep. And again, we are exhibiting at the Oil and Gas Show, June 7, 8, 9 in Calgary. if you are interested in coming down, drop me an email. We do have some free passes, and give some of this technology a try.
Oh, it's fun. It's Calgary Stampede Park, booth 1661 if you're reading it. I definitely encourage you to check them out. I'm going to try and make it down myself if that's possible. Certainly look forward to watching my evolution and fame grow as the future star of technical immersive simulation.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be telling people what they should know and what they should do.
Yes.
Steve Zurikowski, the CEO of Dynamic Vision, specializing in 3D animation and interactive simulation. I want to thank our guest, Amy Nagar, who came to us from the UK with Veolia, and also to Andy Beal, the CEO of WorldViz, who joined us on this very, very interesting project. All the best to you. I know we will be doing things for many years to come. Now that's a brilliant idea, and I bet you have to come up with it more than every 60 seconds, but I'm sure continued success to you. I want to leave you with this clip which we showed you earlier, because it really does tell the Dynamic Vision story. Thank you for joining me. I'm Michael Crichton. You've been watching A Brilliant Idea every 60 seconds here on FusedLogic TV.